Good morning, class, or if you're in my fifth period, good afternoon. Today's presentation is going to be called The Two Worlds of Christendom. The idea here is that I'm going to record my lectures, going to try this out, see how this goes, and you're going to use the PowerPoint online presentation to follow along and fill in the blanks. So today, Two Worlds of Christendom, going to be talking about the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, which we're going to end up calling the Byzantine Empire. Now, with every presentation, you're going to get either a focus question or an SAQ, and in this case, you're going to get a focus question. What is the legacy of the Byzantine Empire? Ideally, you should be able to answer this question after the presentation using either the notes themselves or anything else that you've used to study about this chapter. So it could be the videos, the handouts, smart book, etc. Now let me show you guys on a map. So here we have the Western Roman Empire in red and the Eastern Roman Empire in orange, which we're going to end up calling the Byzantine Empire. Byzantine Empire is going to exist from 330 AD until about 1453 AD. The Byzantine Empire is interesting because it is considered to be the Roman Empire, even though it is not located in Rome. In fact, most of the people that live in the Byzantine Empire will consider themselves to be Romans, even though they don't speak Latin. They speak Greek. But as we're going to see, they're going to follow the same Roman traditions. So let's talk about Rome first. The city of Rome, actually let me back up real quick. This background picture is actually a picture that I took when I visited Rome in November of 2016. This is the Roman Forum, and as you can see, it's still there. You can still visit it. Off in the far back is the Colosseum. Above those three pillars that you see to the right is the spot where it's believed that Rome was founded. And right around the corner here in front of you to the left is the spot where they cremated Julius Caesar. So really cool. Just a nice way of me saying I went to Rome and you have it. Ha ha ha. Anyways, now let's talk about Rome. So the city of Rome was conquered by barbarians in 476 CE. The last emperor was this good-looking cat here, Romulus Augustus. The problem with the Roman Empire was that it was constantly sacked at one point or another. The Ostrogoths, the Huns, the Visigoths, the Vandals, all will sack Rome at one point or another. And because of this, we're going to have no true Roman emperor after 476 CE. And what makes it even more difficult to govern is the expansion of the empire. So what do the Romans decide to do as they conquer other peoples? Well, they decide that the best way to bring them into the empire is to make these conquered peoples Romans themselves. And for a long time this worked, up until the 5th century. I'm going to show you guys this clip here. This is from a movie, a comedy, Monty Python. And basically, as you watch the clip, try to see what you can answer that question. What did the Romans give to their conquered lands?
They bled us white, bastards. They've taken everything we had. And not just from us, from our fathers, and from our fathers' fathers.
And from our fathers' fathers' fathers.
Yeah.
And from our fathers' 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 fathers.
Yeah, all right, Stan, don't labour the point. And what have they ever given us in return?
The aqueduct?
What?
The aqueduct.
Oh, yeah, they did give us that. That's true, yeah.
And the sanitation.
Oh, yeah, the sanitation, Reg. Remember what the city used to be like?
Yeah, all right, I'll grant you, the aqueduct and sanitation are two things the Romans have done.
And the roads.
Well, yeah, obviously the roads. I mean, the roads go without saying, don't they? But apart from the sanitation, the aqueduct and the roads...
Irrigation. Medicine. Education.
Yeah, all right, fair enough.
And the wine.
Yeah, that's something we'd really miss, Reg, if the Romans left.
Public baths.
And it's safe to walk in the streets at night now, Reg.
Yeah, they certainly know how to keep order. Let's face it, the only ones who could in a place like this.
All right, but apart from the sanitation, the medicine, education, wine, public order, irrigation, roads, a fresh water system and public health, what have the Romans ever done for us?
Brought peace.
Oh, peace! Shut up!
what did the Romans ever do for us? Well, what did the Romans give to their conquered lands or conquered peoples? The aqueduct, sanitation, roads, irrigation, medicine, education, health, wine, public baths, public order, and peace. And they did give peace for a long time until the 5th century, when we have all of these Germanic tribes and peoples invading, constantly invading Rome. And this leads us to those mercenaries. So by the 3rd and 4th centuries, the empire began to allow mercenaries into the army to fight against Germanic peoples. The Germanic peoples were considered by the Romans to be barbaric, and in the way that they fought, they were savage. So the Romans, in fighting against the Germanic tribes, decided, hey, let's hire these same Germanic peoples to fight with us against these invaders, against these barbarians, against these savages. And so they started to pay some of these Germanic peoples to fight in the Roman army. And as you can imagine, what ends up happening, the mercenaries were not loyal to the Roman commanders. They were loyal to the gold. After all, they were mercenaries. This ends up being a recipe for civil war. General after general will declare himself Emperor of Rome. And to give you an idea of how hectic it was during this time, between 235 and 284 CE, 41 different people were either emperor or claimed to be emperor. This meant that the Western Roman Empire is descending into chaos. And while this is happening, we have the Byzantine Empire. And so the Byzantines will have their capital in Byzantium, a city on the Bosporus Strait. Constantine will later rename Constantinople. Constantine moved the headquarters of the Roman Empire to Constantinople in 324 CE. And so when we look at the same map, we see development of two worlds of Christendom, as the chapter calls it, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, which we will call the Byzantine Empire. And they're going to move, Constantine's going to move the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome in Italy to here, to this spot, to Byzantium, and rename it Constantinople after himself. So here's a video of John Green talking about this.
There was a lot of continuity between the old Western Roman Empire and the new Eastern one. Politically, each was ruled by a single man. Sometimes there were two, and once there were four, but let's forget about that for now, who wielded absolute military power. War was pretty much constant as the Byzantines fought the Persian Sasanian Empire and then various Islamic empires. Trade in valuable agricultural land that yielded high taxes meant that the Byzantine Empire was, like the Western Roman Empire, exceptionally rich, and it was slightly more compact as a territory than its predecessor and much more urban, containing, as it did, all of those once independent Greek city-states, which made it easier to administer. Also, like their Western counterparts, the Byzantines enjoyed spectacle and sport. Chariot races in Constantinople were huge, with thousands turning out at the Hippodrome to cheer on their favorites. Big bets were placed, and there was a huge rivalry, not just about sports, but also about political affiliations between the two main teams, the Blues and the Greens. Thanks for putting us on the Greens, Thought Bubble. That rivalry was so heated that riots often broke out between them, and in one such riot, an estimated 30,000 people
The question arises then that why did Constantine move the capital from Rome to Constantinople? Well, why did he do this? Well, first of all, he was born in modern-day Croatia, so this is in Eastern Europe. He actually spoke better Greek than Latin. People in the Western Roman Empire spoke Latin. People in the Byzantine Empire are going to speak mostly Greek. The Eastern provinces were a lot richer than the Western provinces, and especially from a looting perspective. And remember that during this time, the Byzantines are going to constant war with the Persians. And so it was kind of seen as a way to strategically defend and invade against the Persians. Then there's the question of Christianity. And what Constantine does is going to lead to kind of a split between the Western Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire. So Constantine is going to hold the first church council in Nicaea in 325 CE, and this marks the beginning of the emperor having greater control over the church. Now, why is this important? Why does this matter? Well, because it's going to create great tension between both empires, one centered in Rome and one centered in Constantinople. We're going to have an empire that is centered around the Pope in the west, and we're going to have an empire that's centered around the Patriarch in the east. By the 4th century, Constantinople's population had soared, while Rome's had gone from 500,000 to 80,000. Now, how is this going to happen? How is this split going to cause even more tension? Well, it's going to happen under Justinian. Justinian is known as probably the best Byzantine emperor after Constantine. Justinian was born a peasant somewhere in the Balkans and then rose to become emperor in 527 CE. He's going to rule for 30 years. And I actually had you guys watch one of those extra history videos that talked about his little cartoons. I kind of like those. He's very famous for taking Carthage back. He took Rome for the Goths, at least for a little bit. Built one of the great churches of all time. At the time that he built it, it was called the Church of St. Wisdom. But after it was conquered by the Muslims, it was renamed the Hagia Sophia. Now, the background image that I use in here is the Hagia Sophia. It's just a beautiful church turned mosque. And so here I'm going to play a little clip that shows us the insides of this beautiful, beautiful temple.
The best look at ancient Constantinople is a church-turned mosque that's been considered among the greatest houses of worship in both the Christian and Muslim worlds. Hagia Sophia, the great church of Constantinople. Built by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian in the early 6th century on the grandest scale possible, it was later converted into a mosque by the conquering Ottomans. Today, it's a museum. Hagia Sophia, which marks the high point of Byzantine architecture, is the pinnacle of that society's 6th century glory days.
This church was completed in 537, just about when Europe was entering its Dark Ages. For 4 centuries after that, Christians in Europe looked to Constantinople as the leading city in Christendom, and this was its leading church.
This clever dome-upon-dome construction was the biggest dome anywhere until the Cathedral of Florence was finished during the Renaissance 900 years later. The vast interior gives the impression of a golden, weightless shell, gracefully disguising the massive overhead load supported by masterful Byzantine engineering. 40 arched windows shed a soft light on the interior, showing off the church's original marble and glittering mosaics. But the Byzantine Empire collapsed in the 15th century, and Hagia Sophia was turned into a mosque. Christian mosaics were plastered over, and new religious symbols replaced the old.
This church was built to face Jerusalem. Mosques face Mecca. When Hagia Sophia became a mosque, they couldn't move the church, but they could move the focal point of the praying. Notice how the prayer niche is just a little bit off center.
That's definitely a place that I would like to visit. You know, Constantinople is now known as Istanbul in Turkey, and it's definitely a place that's on my bucket list of places I want to visit. Now, Justinian the Emperor, he was most known for the codification of Roman laws, as you guys saw in that extra history video I had you guys watch. He creates what's called the Digest, 800,000 word condensation of over 1,500 Latin law books. And what had happened during the Byzantine Empire is that we had all of these laws, and they were not codified. And we had laws that contradicted each other. We had laws that were too old, that didn't make any sense. And so we had a lot of corruption in the justice system. And so here comes Justinian, and he creates the Digest, which basically takes all of those bad laws or duplicate laws, gets rid of them, and really sets the basis for our legal codified system today. So here's John Green. He's going to be talking a little bit more about Justinian. Here we go.
Perhaps the most consistently Roman aspect of Byzantine society was that they followed Roman law. The Romans always prided themselves on being ruled by laws, not by men, and even though that wasn't actually the case after the 2nd century BCE, there's no question that the Eastern Roman Empire's codification of Roman laws was one of its great achievements. And much of the credit for that goes to the most famous Byzantine emperor, at least after Constantine, Justinian. I like your brooch, sir. In 533, Justinian published the Digest, an 800,000-word condensation of 1,528 Latin law books. And to go along with this, he published the Institutes, which was like a curriculum for the Roman law schools that existed all through the empire. Justinian, incidentally, was by far the most awesome of the Byzantine emperors. He was like the David Tennant of doctors. He was born a peasant somewhere in the Balkans and then rose to become emperor in 527. He ruled for almost 30 years, and in addition to codifying Roman law, he did a lot to restore the former glory of the Roman Empire. He took Carthage back, he even took Rome back from the Goths, although not for long. And he's responsible for the building of one of the great churches of all time, which is now a mosque, the Hagia Sophia, or Church of Saint Wisdom. So after one of those sporting riots destroyed the previous church, he built this, which with its soaring domes became a symbol for the wealth and opulence of his empire. The Romans were remarkable builders and engineers, and the Hagia Sophia is no exception. A dome its equal wouldn't be built for another 500 years. But you'd never mistake it for a Roman temple. It doesn't have the austerity or the emphasis on engineering that you see in, for instance, the Colosseum. And this building in many ways functions as a symbol for the ways in which the Eastern Roman Empire was both Roman and not. But maybe the most interesting thing that Justinian ever did was to be married to his controversial theater person of a wife, Theodora. Hey, Danica, can we get Theodora up here? Wow, that is perfect. It's funny how married couples always look like each other. Theodora began her career as an actress, dancer, and possible prostitute before becoming empress, and she may have saved her husband's rule by convincing him not to flee the city during riots between the Blues and the Greens. She also mentored a eunuch who went on to become a hugely important general. Mentoring a eunuch sounds like a euphemism, but it's not. And she fought to expand the rights of women in divorce and property ownership, and even had a law passed taking the bold stance that adulterous women
Justinian and Theodora, truly two fascinating characters to come out of the Byzantine Empire. A power struggle is going to start to emerge between the East and the West. Why is that? Well, the Byzantines are going to follow a type of Christianity that we're going to refer to as Greek Orthodox, while the West is going to follow the Roman Catholic Church. So in the West, we have the Pope, who is the head of the Catholic Church and the person most closest to God. In the East, we have what's going to be called the Patriarch, and the Patriarch is going to be appointed by the Emperor. So you could see clearly who has power. In the West, the Pope, who is closest to God, has the power. While in the East, the Patriarch, who is appointed by the Emperor, well, in that case, the Emperor has more control of the church. Now, the Pope, he serves as the head of the Roman Catholic Church, and since the fall of Rome, popes and kings have been in disputes over who has the real power. And in the East, as I mentioned, the Patriarch was always appointed by the Emperor. So here's John Green, and he's going to talk about this East versus West splits.
So in short, the Byzantines continued the Roman legacy of empire and war and law for almost 1,000 years after Romulus Augustus was driven out of Rome. The Byzantines may not have spoken Latin, and few of their emperors came from Rome, but in most important ways, they were Romans. Except one really important way. The Byzantines followed a different form of Christianity, the branch we now call Eastern or sometimes Greek Orthodox. How there came to be a split between the Catholic and Orthodox traditions is complicated. You might even call it Byzantine. What matters for us are the differences between the churches, the main doctrinal one being about the dating of Easter, and the main political one being about who rules whom. Did I get my whom right there, Stan? Yes! In the West, there was a pope, and in the East, there was a patriarch. The pope is the head of the Roman Catholic Church. He sort of serves as God's regent on earth, and he doesn't answer to any secular ruler. And ever since the fall of Rome, there has been a lot of tension in Western Europe between popes and kings over who should have the real power. But in the Orthodox Church, they didn't have that problem because the patriarch was always appointed by the emperor. So it was pretty clear who had control over the church, so much that they even had a word for it, Caesaropapism, Caesar over Pope. But the fact that in Rome there was no emperor after 476 meant there was no one to challenge the Pope, which would profoundly shape European history over the next, 1,200 years.
So, since there was no emperor in Rome after 476, the Pope would profoundly shape European history over the next 1200 years. So, what is the legacy of the Byzantine Empire? And remember, when we say the word legacy, we're thinking about things that they left us behind to us, that we still either use or still in existence today. The Roman Empire would survive for 1,000 years after it left Rome. And that's just kind of strange, peculiar to say, right? The Roman Empire existed for over 1,000 years away from Rome. And again, we call that the Byzantine Empire. Because of the Byzantine Empire, we're going to have a lot of roots in many religious conflicts, especially with the Persians. And of course, the Justinian Law Code continues to be the basis for much of civil law in Europe, which eventually will influence civil law here in the United States.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles! Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles! Heroes in a half shell! Turtle power!
Alright, so this is something that I call Thinking Maps No Time. Nope, we're not going to watch an episode of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as much as I would like that. So your focus question is, what is the legacy of the Byzantine Empire? So for every presentation, you're going to create a thinking map, and in this case, you're going to create a thinking map which classifies the legacy of the Byzantine Empire. And so if I'm asking you to classify what type of thinking map is that, if you said tree map, then you are right. And remember that with everything that you do in this class, try to use your own words, try to paraphrase, and after you're done with the thinking map, and there is a slide in the presentation for you to create a thinking map, use text boxes, use shapes, use lines and arrows and all that, be creative. After you're done with your thinking map online, then it is time for you to answer the focus question. What is the legacy of the Byzantine Empire? And for this question, again, I'm going to ask you to use ACE, and I'm asking you to cite 2 pieces of evidence to support your answer.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
All right, well, that brings me to the end of this presentation. Hopefully you guys like it. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me if you prefer me standing in front of the class for a whole hour, because when I do this live, it takes the entire class period. Or do you guys prefer this, where I record the lecture, probably about video around 20 minutes. You go at your own pace, and if you have any questions, you could still always ask me. So let me know what you think. And, as they say in my hometown, don't forget to be, wait a minute, I am not from John Green's hometown. What do they say in Paramount? What do they say in Paramount? Once a pirate, always a pirate? I don't think that works. Maybe you guys could help me come up with the phrase. All right, see you later.